I'm sure many of you who are true anime fans are familiar with the name Shinichiro Watanabe. He's carved out a place among the high-profile creators for his legendary works such as Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo, and Space Dandy. And as of the spring season of anime, he's added yet another work to his list of accomplishments, Lazarus. This was basically guaranteed to be a huge hit given the people working on it. You had the creator and director of some of the more reputable anime out there working alongside the choreographers of the John Wick series and a top anime studio like MAPPA to pump out an action-packed, well-animated story. The operative word in all of that, though, being basically. I was initially going to be pretty cordial with this review, but after watching episode 12 to make sure I had all of my ducks in a row, I've decided to rescind that. I'm not going to be very nice to this show. There had been this thing that I'll get into that I had been hoping that the show would not confirm and that I would be wrong on something because it would hinge the entire plot on a character being irreparably, unequivocally stupid. And well, that turns out to be the case, and my theory about the whole thing was right, so womp womp. So what is the lowdown on Lazarus? Well, it's the story of some mad scientist gone rogue and bringing about the end of days. Kinda. You have this guy, Dr. Skinner, who is a renowned man across the world for many things, but most particularly for making a drug called Hobna. And that basically got him revered as a saint because it was the ultimate painkiller and everyone was getting high on it all the time. What he never told anyone, though, is that the drug turns lethal after 3 years in your system. So when everyone in the world has taken your drug, you've effectively just set up the ultimate genocide. But Skinner is magnanimous enough to leave humanity one out. You find him, and he will give you the cure to Hobna. And so the NSA assembles a team of wanted criminals and sicks the task of tracking down Skinner on them because apparently they have all the skills they need. The basic idea of this whole show actually looked pretty promising from the first couple of episodes and all the advertising material that I had seen. The animation was great, the main character Axel was fun in a way that made me like him quite a bit on screen. There was also the mystery part where the team would have to track down and find Dr. Skinner to save humanity. I expected a fun action-packed story of the team slowly gathering up seemingly inconsequential clues that, when all put together, would ultimately reveal Skinner's hiding place. But that naive outlook on the story only really lasted until the third episode. That's when my whole image of it was pretty much shattered. When Skinner was practically thrown out in front of us, and this amazing team of jackasses that had been assembled by the NSA walked right up to the dude and started talking to him without even realizing who he was. Seriously, how the hell do you get this close to your mark and not realize that he's right there? Mind you, this is only one member of the team. There is the possibility that he knew and just decided to ignore it, but then that makes him the villain and still a colossal dumbass. And it's beyond this point, which the show really starts to slide downhill into inanely wasting your time. Because from this point on, the only reason any of the team's adventures happen is so that we can get a lecture from Watanabe about how awful we as humans are, and make us ponder whether or not humanity deserves to die. That's it. The team ran into Skinner in the third episode, and the one guy who was right there didn't even realize who he was talking to. He didn't realize he was talking to Skinner. The rest of the plot relies entirely on this idea that the characters don't have eyes to see what is obviously sitting right in front of them. The weird thing is that in all of this, the writing for the rest of the show isn't actually that bad, and it is otherwise not a terrible work. While we can complain about the series spending a good chunk of its time side questing after 3 episodes and making zero progress in the pursuit of the target they literally already found in the 3rd episode, the writing for the most part is fairly solid. Each episode is pretty much a self-contained adventure that offers some good action, maybe a dose of characterization for the cast, a dash of a conspiracy in the background, and a moral lecture from the creator about how humanity is a blight upon the face of the earth. Mind you, in that regard, Watanabe does actually comment on some unsavory elements of humanity that do really exist. The dark side of clubbing life that leads to men exploiting inebriated women, industries built on exploiting the fears of the masses, reckless abandon in regard to the environment, corporate greed that leads to people being exposed to deadly products, the manipulations of religious figureheads that lead to cult behavior and loss of human life, and more. But none of these are widely enough pervasive across humanity to say that they are an innate trait of humans, and certainly none of them are items that would represent a justifiable reason for the extinction of humanity. And within all of that, we do get some background on the characters. We learn that the hacker girl Elena was part of a cult that shunned technology, and she ultimately ran away from that stifling life. We learn that Leland, the blonde dude who gets stuck with a lot of the mediocre tasks, is a rich boy who happened to be the heir to one of the most powerful families in the world. We learn that Chris is a lesbian former Russian agent, well, bisexual at least, who faked her death to leave that life behind. And we learn that Doug punched a dude out in medical school for some racism. Yeah, not all of these backgrounds are created equal, and in fact, the only character who I ever really liked seeing on screen a lot was Axel Gilberto, the one who has no backstory, who's basically the class clown and wild child of the group. It's his antics that really made the most of the show. He was the funnest part of it, because everyone else outside of him is really not all that interesting. There's also this subplot brewing in the background surrounding the military's illegal experiments on prisoners using Hobna, which suggests that this was intended to be some form of weapon and that Skinner had tried to expose them for it. That part of it is now all coming to a head in episode 12 as they've been forced into a corner as the clock hits only a few days left before humanity begins to die off. I won't be surprised in the slightest if the final episode reveals to us that Skinner did all of this just to try and out the military because his previous attempt had ended in accidentally exposing a lethal version of Hobna to an entire airport. I'm fairly convinced at this point too that Skinner's video was kinda just a bluff, and that the commercial version of Hobna that everyone consumed isn't actually lethal. But given the stuff that's happened thus far, I won't put it past Watanabe to make this a cautionary tale about what might become of us if we don't choose some level of cooperation for the future. Regardless, these points are hardly a drop in the bucket compared to the displeasure I get from the stupidity of having revealed Skinner so obviously in episode 3. It is unfortunate that this series is muddled by a cast that is largely uninteresting. A bunch of side-questy adventures that, while entertaining in some ways, ultimately don't lead to anything but a lecture for the viewer, and one huge fucky-wucky on behalf of the director that leaves the entire plot to hinge on Doug's stupidity. Look, I'm genuinely not opposed to this kind of foreshadowing, if that's what you want to call it. But nobody in their right mind would have looked at this man right here and thought that he didn't look suspiciously like Skinner. All it would have taken is for Doug to go, you look a lot like the guy whose face I've familiarized myself with, since it's my task to find him and save the world from a poisonous drug he made, then pull off Skinner's glasses and look the man in the eyes. There are shows that do this sort of thing, that put the main antagonist right before your eyes and reveal them to be that later on. Naruto did this in Shippuden with Tobi/Obito, and it was epic. One of my favorite scenes in anime. The difference is that Tobi is less blatantly obvious to the world around him and to the people watching the show that he's someone to watch out for and doesn't run around with his face out for Kakashi to recognize. What Watanabe's done with all of this is basically slap us across the face and make it so that Skinner's whole plan relies upon the idea that the rest of the world, who should justifiably recognize the face that he broadcast to the planet, doesn't make the connection when the members of Lazarus are sitting right in front of him trying to talk to him. Hiding in plain sight doesn't work when you're this obvious about it. And that is why I have to say that this is probably Watanabe's worst creation of the ones that I have watched. Half of the series exists solely for this humanity bad message and is stacked upon Doug not being able to see what's very obviously right in front of him. It is a poorly constructed plot, if that is what it comes down to. In all of that, I'm kind of left with the feeling that this was a project that was too ambitious for 13 episodes, yet structured in a way that prevented it from being 24 to 26 episodes. What probably would have been an otherwise good anime is ruined most largely by its blatant reveal of Skinner far too early in the story, and far too obviously. It would have been better to have these side adventures each yield a piece of the puzzle while the military gears up to silence any whistleblowers in its ranks in the background, than to basically waste a bunch of time on everything that it did just for a social message. I don't really recommend this anime. Half of it is effectively filler, and that is the big thing that I've given Bleach flack for. I really wanted to like this one at first. I genuinely did, but there is nothing about it at this point that really endears me to it. I feel like I have wasted my time going through this, now that they basically revealed that they came face to face with Skinner in such an obvious way and didn't realize it. But hey, if you like this video, there are plenty more on my channel, and many more to come. So like, subscribe, all that jazz. Later.